Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video that is a very important video. I really want to do is talking about the cancelled Spider-Man 4. Now, for those, this is just basically a talking about what exactly was going to be the fourth entry in the Spider-Man franchise with Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire. Now, do I really need to say, if you guys don't know about it, of course you know about it. This series was the three-movie series starring Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, fighting bad guys like Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, Alfred Molina's Doctor Octopus, and Topher Grace's Venom, Hayden Christensen's Sandman, and James Franco's New Goblin. All these characters were in three movies. The first one was released in 2002, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, James Franco as Harry Osborn, Cliff Robertson as Uncle Ben or Ben Parker, Rosemary Harris as Aunt May or May Parker, Willem Dafoe's Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, and many more actors who played the roles of these iconic characters. This film was a very popular film back in the day, and the film indeed told the origin story of Peter Parker turning into Spider-Man. And this movie lived off the hype of being a live-action Spider-Man. Although we had already gone previous incarnations of the character, this was his first big-budget live-action version. He then had a sequel on the way that lived off the hype of being a sequel to one of the biggest superhero movies of 2002 and the biggest movie of its year, titled Spider-Man 2, released in 2004. Again, bringing back Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, James Franco as Harry Osborn, Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, and even Willem Dafoe back as Norman Osborn. And a newcomer, Alfred Molina, as Dr. Octopus, who will be appearing in the new Spider-Man No Way Home movie, releasing this upcoming December 2021. And a lot more. Cliff Robertson even make a small reappearance in the film, along with Rosemary Harris as Aunt May. There's even an alternate cut titling this the first ever alternate cut of the Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man 2.1, which has a few more added scenes and fight scenes and other scenes that were added in that weren't in the film. And the film made a load of money. It was even quoted by many more as the best superhero movie. Along with that, it got a very well done tying movie game. It was one of the best regarded Spider-Man games, but after that, a lot of fans considered that post Ultimate Spider-Man, the Ultimate Spider-Man game that came after it, after that game, a lot of Spider-Man games failed to compare to that. After this, the third film in the series was made, titled Spider-Man 3, released May 2007. Depending on the country, it was released May 4th. Here in New Zealand, it was released May 7th, 2007. I was born a month earlier. And obviously, this was sadly the final entry in the series, and it ended there with 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man being the next installment 5 years later. This film was the third installment, starring again Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, newly added character Bryce Dallas Howard as Gwen Stacy, James Franco as New Goblin / Harry Osborn, Cliff Robertson making a cameo appearance as Ben Parker / Uncle Ben, Rosemary Harris as May Parker, aka Aunt May, and Topher Grace as Eddie Brock, aka Venom, Hayden Church Christensen as Flynn Marker, aka Sandman, and many more actors, along with actors like Bernard, J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, Elizabeth Banks as Betty Brant, and many more actors. This was the third installment in the series, and to many fans, it's not a very liked film. A lot of people complain to it for its overstuffed three-villain plotline, the uselessly underused Venom plotline, the relationship issues between Peter and MJ, the very weak love triangle, the very weird dance choreography scenes about Peter dealing with his demons, and the very underused amnesia plotline for Harry Osborn. And then, obviously, another big issue is, yeah. This film was massively made a load of money, but was massively hated on by critics and fans. This deeply affected Sam Raimi, knew he wanted to make a sequel. Now, The film ends on a very sad note with Peter and MJ dancing. Sadly, this is how the series goes out, and not a lot of fans, including me, were very happy with this. When I first saw the film, I wondered, wait, that's what it ends on? Okay, there has to be a fourth one. I saw that for the first time all the way back in 2010, and I was hyped up that the next movie would be coming out, titled Spider-Man 4. That was meant to be a movie. Spider-Man 4 was set to be released May 2011, continuing with the May release date that the last several films had set, considering that was a good area for them to release the film in. The film was going to be having Vulture as the villain, it was going to either have Ben Kingsley or some other actor up for the role as Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, who was going to be his most powerful villain yet, even more powerful than Venom and Sandman. The second villain was going to be Anne Hathaway as either Black Cat or the Vultress, but later on it was turned out to be Black Cat, but I'm not surprised it was Black Cat. And even finally Kurt Connors turning into Lizard. But this was all changed. So I'm going to tell you what happened to it. Obviously, there's a cut short video. I'll leave the link in the description just in case you guys want to know more about this, along with a link in the description to a cut short YouTube channel that talks about this. Now, nonetheless, let's continue with this film. So, what happened is that after Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi wanted to make a conclusion to the Spider-Man franchise. He wanted this to be the best one yet, and it probably would have been had Sam Raimi gotten to do what he wanted. But to do that, let's rewind all the way back to 2006. So, here it is. It's around 2004. Spider-Man 2 has just been released in the cinemas and it's blowing box office records, and it's so far deemed the best Spider-Man. And with the games, it's booming with Spider-Man 2, the game, with Ultimate Spider-Man set to come out the next year. The games are booming, the movies are booming, the fans are happy. What could go wrong? The next installment was going to be titled Spider-Man 3, set for a 2007 release date to be released. And it was obviously going to bring Hayden Christensen on as Sandman, with James Franco coming in as New Goblin / Harry Osborn to complete the Goblin arc and to complete the series and then make another sequel. Now, what would this film have been? Well, to be clear, Venom was never meant to be in the film. As seen, Sam Raimi has stated many times, the film never wanted Venom. Sam Raimi in no way was interested in making the character Venom. He only seen him in the animated series, but wasn't really interested in using his character. And I can kind of see it. The Demons plotline, I feel like, would have been used in a more different light. And, yeah. But obviously, Avi Arad said that to make the movie more interesting, to add in Venom. Nonetheless, whether Venom was included or not, it would have varied had Venom not been included. Would have varied. But instead of wanting to X out one of his villains, because, well, obviously, James Franco's Green New Goblin had to complete the Goblin arc. You can't cut him, because, well, his story wouldn't fit into the fourth film. He can't make any more stories up. The first film shows his father becoming the Green Goblin. The second film set him up to become the Green Goblin. This movie has to end it. So he can't be shifted onto the next film. Sandman, no, this film, he wants to establish him as a villain and be the main villain, since he's already created an arc for him. So he kept the two establishing villains and added in Venom. And so we ended up with the three villains. As you can, if you watch the actual movie, you can tell that the villain was very shoehorned in. And I'm very disappointed. I love Venom as a character, and this was unfortunately, my introduction to the character. And the black suit was altered to make it look less fetish, so they gave it a redesign. They just took the suit from Spider-Man 1 and 2, changed the color palette to black, made the spiderweb in silver, and changed the logo on the front and the back to make it look like the suit to make it look like the black suit. And thus far, this created a very unique look for the Spider-Man suit, and this pretty much became his look. The film was released in 2007, and there was a lot of stuff cut for the film. There's even an alternate cut of this film called the Editor's Cut, which has a lot more deleted scenes in it. There's actually a lot of there's a YouTube channel petitioning for a Raimi cut. There's even a change.org petitioning that they make a actual Spider-Man 3 Raimi edition. This is where we get to see the full vision of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 bursted into life. the vision he would have had he got to do what he wanted instead of being forced to his stands. Although you can tell that even though he looks like it was a forced movie and it didn't look like something Sam Raimi made, it still has that Raimi charm, the music, the vibes, the actors, the characters. That's one reason why I think you can still love the movie. This movie has been most memeified to hell out of all the Spider-Man movies, and I'm quite surprised this is hated much more than The Amazing Spider-Man 2, considering this movie is way better than that movie 10 times fold. But that is better for another video. The point was that after Spider-Man 3, there was meant to be a sequel to the film titled Spider-Man 4. And what was supposed to happen? Let's start. The film started production after Spider-Man 3 had ended. Obviously, they wanted to start this and he wanted it to be the best one yet. So he hired very popular writer Mark Vanderbilt to write the script, to be a finale for the films. Even Mark Vanderbilt and Sam Raimi several times have gone on to say this was going to be the best one yet, sensing that it was obviously going to be a finale. Tobey Maguire was set to return as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Kirsten Dunst was going to return as Mary Jane. Rosemary Harris as Aunt May. J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, Elizabeth Banks as Betty Brant, likely Bryce Dallas Howard as Gwen Stacy, and it was going to show Peter and MJ getting married. He was going to go up against the Vulture, and Hathaway was going to play Black Cat. So many ideas were going to happen. Anne Hathaway sadly did not get to play this role, but she did indeed get to play another femme fatale. She got to play Catwoman in 2012's The Dark Knight Rises. So in the end, she did get her just due and got to do her Catwoman. Now, Spider-Man 4 was gonna be likely a very popular film with people. A lot of people would have loved to see this. My mom would have even probably taken me to the cinema to see this. I was actually 4 years old at the time, and I was a bit in the middle with Transformers 3 Dark of the Moon, which I released at the time. I was very disappointed considering it had replaced Michaela Baines. But that's its whole own video of its own. But let's get into the other basics. Spider-Man 4 was going to be the biggest one of them all. Vulture was going to be the villain, played by either Ben Kingsley or someone else. And Hathaway was going to play Black Cat. And many other villains were going to be in it. The film was going to start off with Spider-Man taking down a bunch of bad guys. Shocker, Rhino, all the not really big villain characters. And he was going to show bringing in Mysterio, played by Bruce Campbell. Which is why, if you notice, he appears in the first 3 films. The first film as the match announcer. The second film as the guy who's going to be announcing the guy at MJ's play. The third film, the guy who was the waiter. He was set to play Mysterio as Quentin Beck through all 3 of those films. And many more villains were going to pop up, and the film was actually beginning to shoot. The script, he hadn't exactly finished the script, but he put it in the shooting process, and the film was about to shoot, so things were looking good. Until Sony stepped in. But unlike this film, Sony wanted the Lizard. This would obviously create the 3 villain dilemma. Sam Raimi did not want it again. It's been proven before that 3 villains will not work, but Sony wouldn't listen to reason and wanted Lizard as their main villain. And so they started pressuring Sam Raimi to put him in, and knowing that he didn't want to redo his mistakes from Spider-Man 3. He needed to do these ways to try and make the story work. He needed to make Vulture, Black Cat work in the film. He needed to make Peter and MJ's relationship work, considering people were very disappointed by what they put in this movie. And he needed to try and earn the respect back and a lot of love of the fans from the disappointing Spider-Man 3 movie and the disappointing Spider-Man 3 game that was along with it. Not to mention that a few years before the film was set to be released, a new recent Spider-Man game, 2008's Spider-Man Web of Shadows, was released for PS3 and PS2 and Xbox 360 as a replacement game for Spider-Man 3. It was a course correction game. And at the time, in the next year or so, Spider-Man Shared Dimensions was the new Spider-Man game, developed by Beanox, as Treyarch decided not to do another Spider-Man game, seeing as they wanted to focus on Call of Duty, and Activision wanted them to focus on other things, so they gave their moneymaker to another thing to milk more games of, giving it to Beanox to make Spider-Man Shared Dimensions, where you play as 4 different Spider-Man. Another story for another day. But nonetheless, continuing on with the story, Spider-Man 4, he couldn't get the script together. And due to the amounts of pressure, and days before the film was getting cancelled, Tobey Maguire had a feeling that the film may not make it, but he talked about how much he loved those movies. and the possibility of getting cancelled was sad, and he loved making the movies nonetheless. But due to the fact Sam Raimi could not get a story together, and due to Sony's persistence on not only wanting to include Lizard, but now wanting to do a reboot, and the continuing pressure of meeting the 2011 release date, when they denied him, not pushing it further to 2012, and the amounts of pressure he was getting from Spidey fans all around the world, he knew he couldn't make Sony happy. If he made Sony happy, he couldn't make the fans happy. If he made the fans happy, he couldn't make Sony happy. So the pressuring and all that dealt him the want to leave the film, so he left. With Tobey Maguire deciding not to be on the film, knowing that the film would not succeed without it. So with the main star gone, along with the director, and likely the rest of the cast wouldn't suffice, so Kirsten Dunst, Bryce Dallas Howard, this is not confirmed, Bryce Dallas Howard was not confirmed to be reappearing in the film, nor some of these other characters, Rosemary Harris, Kirsten Dunst, J.K. Simmons, Elizabeth Banks, and the actor who played Robbie Robertson, and even Bryce Dallas Howard were not brought back for the sequel. And so they decided not wanting to continue with what they were doing, and knowing that the license was going to get lost in 2012, they knew they had to do a script. So, to make up for it, they decided to push the reboot button. They cancelled the film, and the films were cut off short. And a lot of fans, including heavily me and my mom, agreed that the film should have finished off the storyline. Unfortunately, none of us got that. The game alongside it, developed by Rocksteady, was also cancelled for 2011. It was a new game, but it was not finished due to the fact it was going to have the script of the film. So yeah, but after being cancelled, Treyarch only made 3 of the games. They did not plan to make a 4th. It was likely going to be Beanox or Rocksteady making the game. But nonetheless, the game was cancelled, and well, now we need to move on to The Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man, while the film was getting cancelled, they had an auxiliary script in play, knowing that Sam Raimi may walk away, or the project may go underway, may go down, so the ship may sink. So when the Spider-Man 4 ship sank, they got a new crew, took Mark Vanderbilt to write the auxiliary script with Lizard as a villain and the dark gothic tone, and asked him to write a script. Obviously, they asked Mark Webb, who had directed 500 Days of Summer, to make a Spider-Man movie that appeals towards young people. And it has a grounded dark tone like The Dark Knight, to try and appeal to that. He was able to actually quite a decent version of the film. He filmed most of it. There's a lot of scenes he actually filmed for the film. He filmed a lot of the shots, and the film was going to take a lot of inspiration, especially with the characters from 500 Days of Summer and the comics. This is going to be based heavily on the Ultimate and even the classic comics. That's what he was heavily going to base his interpretation on. So that's what he based it on. The film was going to focus on Peter Parker's parents. It had nothing to do with the whole Uncle Ben's origin story thing again. But after showing it to test audiences and realizing they didn't like it, Sony got cold feet and reverted it. They added in scenes that were similar to the original, shoehorned in the origin story, and took anything that made it unique of a film out and made it have a clashing plotline, and left the Peter Parker's parents storyline up on a whim so that the second movie could continue it. And that began the dawning of a new franchise that didn't even last that long and only lasted 2 movies. But yes, Spider-Man 4 was cancelled, and due to its cancellation, this led a lot of fans sad, and there will always be discussions about the cancelled Spider-Man 4, what could have been, the games, and but forever known, the Spider-Man of Earth 92168, I believe it is, 92816 or something, will always be remembered in those of fans. Many people got into the character Spider-Man via the movies. Fans of the 90s got into Spider-Man via the cartoon, the 1990s cartoon, Spider-Man. Fans of the early 2000s got into it via the Spider-Man games, and a lot of fans around the world, got into it via the Spider-Man movies, especially Tobey Maguire's. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man cast a shadow over the franchise like the gate in the game world too. They also casted a shadow over the franchise that could not have been broken yet. And basically, there's been 2 reboot interpretations, and a lot of people who grew up with the Raimi films know that the reboot would never be the same as the original. Andrew Garfield's films only lasted for 2 films, 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man and 2014's The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That was just to be its own set of films with a trilogy, even spin-offs like Venom, Morbius, Kraven the Hunter, Sinister Six. All these plans were planned to be spinning off from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. which is why that dumpster fire has 3 villains to set up future sequels, and has a buckload of references to set up future installments. Obviously, that failed the film, and it just turned into a hot pile of garbage, which I'd rather watch Iron Man 2, which is another movie that overstuffed its ideas, and I'd rather watch that than The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is a piece of shit. But nonetheless, Tobey Maguire is my favorite Spider-Man. I grew up with him, and if he's indeed set to return in the future Spider-Man No Way Home, I'd actually like it if they gave him a character arc. So they start his character arc off with Spider-Man No Way Home. They bring him back, and he gets an arc of remembering how to be Spider-Man, and then he gets a second movie arc with Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange 2, and then gets a third arc in the Into the Spider-Verse 2 film, which would complete his arc of a character. And obviously, I'd like to see that for Andrew Garfield, so Spider-Man No Way Home does his first movie, and then the second one is Into the Spider-Verse 2, completing that arc of his character. So, yeah. But nonetheless, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man casted a shadow over the franchise. I don't think it would ever replace the sentiment that those movies had. Although the third movie is hated, I do not know why this movie is considered more worse than the abominable Amazing Spider-Man 2. And to actually give a little basis on that, here's a little basis on that. Number 1, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 does not have any of the heart that the original 3 movies had. None of the actors even, and the third has no heart. Number 2, it has no sense of wanting to adapt to the comics or even mention some stuff from the past movie. Number 3, it puts in stuff for reasons. Because, so Harry exists now. Yeah, Harry exists now because, Harry comes like, hey guys, I exist. I'm not gonna fuck off anymore. I exist now. I'm not dead. I'm played by stupid Dana Hahn. They screwed over the director. They screwed over the actors who played these iconic characters. And although the Gwen Stacy death is not sexist or offensive, I believe it was rushed. It was not earned. There's cool scenes in Amazing Spider-Man that the film does not indeed earn. Not to mention that, the inconsistent tone. Spider-Man the original trilogy kept the tone of being lighthearted, and a very lighthearted, very thrilling ride with a bit of horror and a bit of laughs in between. The reboot, it was going to be a course correction. The Amazing Spider-Man gave a dark... People wanted web shooters. They gave him web shooters. People wanted him to quip. He quipped. Sony wanted him to have a dark and grounded tone. Gave him a dark and grounded tone. People wanted Peter Parker to be in high school again. They put him in high school. Sony wanted it to be a movie with Lizard in it. They got the Lizard in it. They wanted to be stronger and appeal to young people. They got that. Then the second movie, the course corrected. People wanted a new suit. Gave him a new suit. People wanted the tone to be more lighthearted. They gave him that. People wanted it to be more thrilling and interesting, and the whips wanted to be better. They did all that. They fucked up the movies. You can make a good movie, but had the studios not interfered and just let the director do his job, that would have gone us. We would have not had to deal with 3 Spider-Men. I would have not had to deal with 3 Spider-Men coming onto the fucking TV. Now let's calm down here. Let me calm down. Okay, let me calm down and speak that phrase again. Sony, what the hell, man? I just wish that had Sony not pressured Sam Raimi and annoyed him to make the Venom in the movie, they could have left him alone. He would have made a decent Spider-Man 3, and it wouldn't have made enough money, but it would have been a decent third movie that fans could respect more had they plucked Venom out and put him in another movie. Then pop him into Spider-Man 4. You make Spider-Man 4. You release it in 2011. You make that a second to last finale. You make maybe even a Spider-Man 5. And then make that the finale with Venom and the Lizard in it. And that doesn't create the big fat causality issue that killed the Spider-Man franchise. So, yeah. Or, I don't know, when he was making Spider-Man 4, you don't put Lizard in there and leave him to make the movie. And then that's the film series ended. Then you can do your dumb, plunky reboot. But then, no. So with The Amazing Spider-Man 1, we could have gotten a heartfelt story, talking about acceptance and the fact that people need to move on, with a realistic relationship and a realistic take on a character. We did not need the origin story. Even Mark Webb and the creators knew that. The dark gothic tone, got it. Peter Parker's parents' mystery, unique untold story. But no, We needed an origin story again. Yeah, because we're apparently half the fandom is a dumbass that doesn't know Spider-Man's fucking origin story. Of course, we're fans because we don't know how the fuck he became a superhero. We don't know that he got bit on the hand by a spider. We don't know that he lost his Uncle Ben. We don't know about blah 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 blah. We don't know about any of that. So just please tell us another story again. We don't mind getting another 2-hour film that wastes our time getting shoved in our faces. So yeah, not to mention that, it also got quite a decent semi-sequel game. And then The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came along. And both fucked up the movie franchise and the games. And also sort of killed the time movie game franchise. For those who existed back in the 2000s, the roaring 2000s and the 2010s, early 2010s, may I add, Time movie games was where every big fat movie, including somehow a DreamWorks movies like the Bee Movie and People vs. Monsters, where they got time movie games based on either the movie or having nothing to do with it. And obviously Spider-Man was no different. About 5 out of the 11 Spider-Man movies have gotten time movie games. Spider-Man got a time movie game for Xbox and PS2 and portable consoles. Spider-Man 2, a well-regarded game, got an Xbox, PS2 and more release. And Spider-Man 3 got an awful PS2 release, a PS3 and Xbox 360 release, and many more. Then The Amazing Spider-Man got a pretty good PC, Xbox 360 and PS3 release, along with the Wii and Wii U release. And then obviously we got The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which got a release on Wii, Wii U, PS4, PS3, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. And it was developed for the Xbox 360 and PS3, but was forwarded up to the PS4 and Xbox One. So a lot of those people who think, oh man, Spider-Man 3 sucks balls, don't forget the trash dump that is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I'd rather watch Spider-Man 3 or any other Spider-Man movie. But the only movie I'll never ever watch over Spider-Man is the only movie I'll never watch over The Amazing Spider-Man 2 would be any horror movie and Transformers: Age of Extinction. I hate that movie to pieces. So yeah. But I gotta keep calm here. Let's continue. But nonetheless, Spider-Man 4 was an important part of the Spider-Man movie legacy. And it's very sad that to see people dump on Sam Raimi for a movie that wasn't exactly his fault. In my opinion, even though nowadays people are not that pissed about it anymore, to just say, oh man, it's your fault. He had no control over it. If people just look at a story, you can see that it had the ability to be good. If you remove Venom, I know my mom and a lot of people love Venom, but he couldn't be in the story. He couldn't fit it. Although the hype of the film convinced you otherwise. Because so far, the movies before it and after it, the first movie lived off the hype of being a big budgeted live-action Spider-Man adaptation, pleasing Stan Lee and a lot of fans. The second movie lived off the hype of being one of the biggest sequel to one of the biggest movies of 2002. And this movie was going to live off the hype of having Venom in it, an iconic Spider-Man character. The Amazing Spider-Man, the next movie in the series, lived off the hype of being a reboot. And The Amazing Spider-Man 2 lived off the hype of being the sequel to The Amazing Spider-Man 1. Spider-Man Homecoming lived off the hype of being a MCU Spider-Man movie. Far From Home lived off the hype of being a Spider-Man movie that was set after Endgame. Into the Spider-Verse lived off the hype of being a Miles movie and the first animated movie of Spider-Man. Venom lived off the hype of being the first spin-off Spider-Man movie and a Venom movie. And now the new Venom, Let There Be Carnage, will indeed live off the hype of being a sequel to Venom, but also, the big thing is have Carnage in it. That's what the main hype will be for it. And then Spider-Man No Way Home, the big hype will obviously be the big three. For those of you who don't know, and I've already said this earlier in the video, it has been rumored that Tobey Maguire will indeed be reappearing as Spider-Man of Earth 92618. Or I think that's how it's said. I don't know. I need to look it up on Google again. But anyway, he'll be reappearing as his version of Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, in the 2021 No Way Home film, along with Andrew Garfield. And if he is, Tobey is doing an excellent job at hiding it. Andrew kind of sucks at hiding his job, that he's Spider-Man. So yeah. Would I ever like a recast Spider-Man 3? Maybe. That film was in real life, but yes, I would probably like a recut. But the Amazing Spider-Man films, most definitely, yes, I would like to see recuts of those because I don't like those films at all. The Amazing Spider-Man 1 especially. That was actually quite a decent film nowadays. But yes, sadly, with the decline, after Spider-Man 3, the Spider-Man films did decline for a bit. The Amazing Spider-Man was a meh movie to a lot of fans. Amazing Spider-Man 2 was complete garbage to a lot of people, and so was the game. I think the game's alright, although it still has the suffering of being a movie tie-in game. With that, tie-in movie games are rarely seen nowadays. The only tie-in movies you get, games and movies you get, is the Lego games. One of them was a tie-in movie game for The Incredibles 2 and Incredibles 1. And another one was the Lego Movie 2 and Lego Marvel's Avengers. Although Watch Mojo says that Lego Marvel's Avengers sucks balls. Hurtful. Incredibles, tiny bit more hurtful. Except for Lego Movie 2. I don't like that movie that much. But nonetheless, this is a film that sadly got cancelled. I would have liked to seen it. Now, I'm going to ask you guys in the comments below, which one of these movies would you have wanted to see had they been made? Spider-Man 4. The Amazing Spider-Man 3. The Amazing Spider-Man 4. Or the cancelled Sinister Six movie that was never made. Tell me, which one of those 4 movies would you have liked to see in the comments below? And for the other 3 movies, their release dates would have been this. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 would have come out in 2016, with The Amazing Spider-Man 4 following suit in 2018. And Sinister Six would likely come out in either 2017 or 2019 or 2020 or 2021. With that, I leave you. Now, to this, I will be doing reviews on Spider-Man movies in December. For the upcoming Spider-Man month, I'll be doing on my channel. And I will be doing a Venom Let There Be Carnage review. So yes, expect it. October, Venom Let There Be Carnage will be released in October 2021. With the next month being Ghostbusters Afterlife, releasing November 2021. And then December will be Spider-Man No Way Home, releasing December 26th in America, Canada, and other countries, with it releasing December 26th here in New Zealand and Australia. Hopefully you guys have a good day, and make sure to tell me in the comments below, which Spider-Man movie would you have wanted to see be made? Spider-Man 4, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and 4, or the Sinister Six movie? Which one out of those 3 or 4 movies would you have liked to see made? And click like, subscribe, and the notification bell, wherever that devious thing is, so you don't miss any more content. And see you guys next time for the next video that I'll be making on this channel. That is all. See you guys later. Ciao.